Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place you come to really get under the hood of complex topics. Today, we're tackling something that, well, let's be honest, often sounds a bit dry. ISO 9001.2013. I know. Maybe you're picturing audits, paperwork, maybe a certificate on the wall. But here's the twist. What if it's actually a seriously powerful strategic tool, something that can genuinely drive growth and give companies a real edge? So our mission today, peel back those layers. We're going way beyond textbook definitions. We want to show you how ISO 901.2013 works in the real world, reveal its value for, efficiency, growth, and staying ahead of the competition.
That's exactly it. And the 2015 version specifically, it really shifted things. It's much more focused on processes, on something called risk-based thinking, which basically just means thinking ahead, planning for potential problems before they hit. And ultimately, it's all geared towards making customers happier by embedding quality into, well, everything the company does. It's part of the culture, not just a department.
Right. And to make this super clear, really practical for you listening, we're going to follow a hypothetical company. Let's call them Fabricaciones de Precisión, SA. We'll see how they actually use the standard step by step, what worked, what didn't, the real benefits, but also the common traps to watch out for. Think of it like a case study, but more conversational, your shortcut to getting a handle on this important framework. Okay, so let's unpack this. A lot of people probably think ISO starts with writing a bunch of quality procedures, right? But where does ISO 901.201 truly begin? Like the absolute first step?
Yeah, that's a common misconception. It actually starts much higher up, right at the top, really. It begins with genuine commitment from leadership. And crucially, a deep understanding of the company's own specific world, its context. The standard basically requires leadership to make sure the quality management system, the QMS, aligns with their overall strategy. That means looking inwards at culture, resources, what they're good at, and also outwards market trends, laws, technology, what competitors are doing, and maybe most importantly, what all their stakeholders actually expect from them.
Ah, okay. So it's like mapping the terrain first, understanding the internal landscape and the external pressures before you make any moves. How did our example company, Fabricación de Precisión, handle that? What did they actually do?
Exactly. Mapping the terrain is a great way to put it. They did a pretty thorough context analysis. They used standard tools, things like SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. You know the drill. But they also did a PESTLE analysis. That's looking at political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental factors.
Well,
And this wasn't just box ticking. It uncovered some really critical risks they needed to address, like new environmental regulations coming down the pike externally. And internally, they saw they had high staff turnover in one key area, which was a big risk for production.
wow. Okay. So linking those big external things to specific internal vulnerabilities makes sense. And the stakeholders you mentioned. Who did they identify beyond just customers, and what did they find out those groups needed? Because sometimes those needs clash, right?
They really can, yeah. So they listed out all their interested parties. Customers obviously wanted on-time deliveries, 0 defects, pretty standard. But then employees needed training and a safe place to work. Shareholders, naturally, focused on profitability. What they did was map these needs. And often you find links, like investing in employee training actually reduces defects, which makes customers happy, which helps profitability. See?
Meaning the win-wins.
Exactly. It forces that holistic view. Based on all that, they drafted their quality policy, something clear, like satisfy our customers' requirements through continuous improvement and developing our people. Simple, direct, and they put it up everywhere so everyone was on the same page.
Okay, that policy sounds good. It connects the dots. But let's be real. A policy on the wall doesn't automatically change things.
Yeah.
So they've got the context, they've got the policy. How does leadership make sure this becomes, a living, breathing thing, focus on the customer day in, day out, not just words?
That's the crucial next step. Leadership has to actively weave the QMS into the fabric of the business. It can't be some separate quality thing. It means clear roles, clear responsibilities. Often they'll appoint someone specific, maybe a quality manager, as the management representative. This person needs real authority to manage the system and, importantly, report directly to the top brass. Keeps quality visible and accountable.
So it's active, ongoing engagement from the top, not just signing off once a year. But, I can hear some listeners thinking, oh, great, more meetings, more reports. How did Fabricaciones de Precisión avoid that becoming just, bureaucratic overhead?
Yeah, that's the danger zone. They tackled it with their management review meetings, held quarterly. But these weren't just check-ins. They were serious, data-driven working sessions. Top management didn't just show up. They dug into the numbers. Customer satisfaction index from surveys, complaints, defect rates, on-time delivery stats, internal audit results. And here's the key. They made decisions based on that data right there in the meeting. Like, if the numbers consistently showed machine X was a bottleneck causing delays, boom, decision made to invest in a new one or change the workflow. Actions, not just talk.
That's powerful. Using data to drive real change shows leadership is actually steering, not just observing. Okay.
Yeah.
So they understand their current situation, leadership's engaged. How do they use all that to look ahead, to plan for the future, tackle those risks they found, and really set a course for quality success?
Right. That brings us to planning, Clause 6. This is where they get proactive. They have to address those risks and opportunities they identified earlier. And then based on that, set clear, measurable quality objectives. It's about moving from constantly fighting fire's reactive mode to actually preventing them and even finding upsides proactive management, getting ahead of the curve.
Okay, proactive. How did Fabricaciones de Precision make that concrete? Did they have, like, a system for tracking those risks?
They did. They created a risk and opportunity matrix. Sounds fancy, but it's basically a tool to rate risks. They looked at the probability of something happening and the potential impact if it did. For instance, the risk of a key supplier going bust, they rated it medium probability, high impact, big problem if it happened, and they didn't just write it down. The action plan was immediate. Find and qualify an alternative supplier now. It's about building resilience, That supplier risk isn't just theoretical. I've seen companies crippled overnight because they didn't have a plan B. This prevents that kind of disaster.
Wow. Yeah, that really grounds it. It's not just a spreadsheet exercise. It's business survival sometimes, building in that backup plan. And once they've got a handle on the risks and opportunities, how do they translate that into actual goals everyone could work towards?
They used SMART objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. No vague stuff like improve quality. It was concrete things like reduce non-conforming products from 2% to 1% in 12 months, or maybe boost on-time delivery from 85% and 95% in 6 months. Crystal clear targets, deadlines, everyone knows what success looks like and when it's expected. Links daily work straight back to the strategy.
This is where it gets really interesting for the day-to-day, I think. We've got the strategy, the leadership buy-in, the plans. Now, how do they make sure everyone actually has what they need, the tools, the training, the info, and that the processes on the shop floor run smoothly enough to actually hit those SMART objectives, the nuts and bolts?
Exactly. This is clauses 7 and 8, support and operations. It's about providing the right resources, people, yes, but also infrastructure, the work environment itself. And then, critically, it's about controlling the operational processes, taking that high-level strategy and making it reality on the floor consistently.
Let's get specific. Take the people part. How did Fabricaciones de Precision make sure their team was ready and able?
Good question. For HR, they didn't just do generic training. They had an annual plan based specifically on the competencies needed for each job role. They figured out what skills were needed, maybe through performance reviews or seeing where errors were happening, and targeted the training there. And importantly, they checked if the training actually worked. Did performance improve? Did errors go down? It's about effective training, not just ticking a box.
Makes sense. And, the documentation aspect of ISO often scares people. Visions of giant binders, endless procedures.
Right.
How did a company like Fabricaciones de Precision, presumably wanting to be agile, handle that? Avoid the dreaded paper monster.
Ah, yes, the paper monster. It's a real fear, but often based on older versions or poor implementation. They focused on documenting only what was truly necessary. Critical work instructions, yes, things needed for consistency or traceability. But the emphasis was lean documentation, not creating paper for paper's sake. They used collaborative software for version control, making sure everyone had the current procedure easily accessible digitally, no dusty binders needed.
Okay, so smart documentation. And on the actual production line, how did they control things to hit that defect reduction goal, for example? What did an operator see?
To cut defects, they put verification steps right into the workflow. Checklists at key points. Operators had clear, maybe visual instructions right there, access to specs. The goal was to make quality checks just a normal part of the job, intuitive. Building quality in, not inspecting it out at the end.
And supplier is always a huge factor, right?
Yep.
You could have perfect internal processes, but if the incoming stuff is bad,
Absolutely. Supplier management was key for them. They had a solid process for evaluating and choosing suppliers. And it wasn't just about the lowest price, a common trap. They looked hard at quality criteria. Material consistency, delivery reliability. Did the supplier have their own quality system? Key suppliers got audited regularly. It was about building partnerships based on quality, not just transactions. They even fed back performance data to help suppliers improve. It's a two-way street.
Okay, so Fabricaciones de Precision has put in all this effort, strategy, leadership, planning, operations. They've built the machine. But how do they know if it's actually working? If it's delivering the results they want? What's the feedback loop?
That's Clause 9, performance evaluation. This is all about checking if the QMS is doing what it's supposed to do. It involves monitoring, measuring key things, analyzing the data, and then evaluating overall performance. It's about using hard data, not just gut feelings, to see what's really going on.
What kind of tools did they use? How did they keep track across different parts of the business?
They use dashboards with key performance indicators, KPIs tailored for each area. So production might track efficiency, throughput, downtime. Sales would watch customer satisfaction scores, order accuracy. These dashboards gave each team a clear, real-time view of how they were doing against their objectives. It empowers them, really.
And internal audits must fit in here too. How did they make sure those were actually helpful and not just, something people dreaded?
Good point. Audits can have a bad rap. They made a conscious effort to make them constructive. They had a trained team of internal auditors, and crucially, it wasn't just the quality manager. It was people from different departments bringing fresh eyes. Their explicit goal wasn't just finding non-conformities, but actively looking for opportunities for improvement. It was about learning, not blaming. Findings were documented, discussed, actions agreed. It became a positive improvement cycle.
And customer feedback. Beyond the internal numbers, how did they capture the customer's voice?
Essential. They didn't just rely on defect rates. They actively sought customer input. Regular satisfaction surveys went out after projects, specific questions about the product, the service, communication. But they also monitored online reviews, social media mentions, getting that broader, unfiltered feedback too, really listening to what the market was saying.
Okay, so they're measuring, they're auditing, they're listening, they have all this data, all these insights. What happens next? How does this translate into actual ongoing improvement, making sure the system doesn't just plateau after the initial setup?
Right. That brings us to Clause 10, improvement. This is the engine of ISO 9001, really. It's where the organization deliberately works to make the QMS better, more suitable, more effective, more efficient over time. It's about that culture of always getting better.
Can you give an example? Like, what happens when something inevitably does go wrong at Fabricaciones de Precision? A bad batch slips through, maybe?
Yeah, because things do go wrong. When a nonconformity pops up, say, that bad batch, they don't just scrap it and move on. They kick off a formal corrective action process. The key here is digging deep for the root cause. Why did it happen? They might use tools like the 5 whys or fishbone diagrams. Let's say they find the root cause was a supplier changed a material spec without telling them properly. The corrective action isn't just fixing the batch, it's fixing the system. Revising the change control process, improving supplier communication protocols, so it fundamentally can't happen that way again.
Got it. So it's systemic fixing, not just patching holes.
Yeah.
Preventing it from recurring. And what about improvements when things aren't broken? Proactive stuff.
Absolutely. It's not just about fixing problems. They actively encouraged continuous improvement initiatives. Remember those management review meetings? That was a forum where improvement ideas from employees, maybe from suggestion boxes or just brought up by teams, were seriously discussed. They'd prioritize them based on potential impact, feasibility, and then actually implement them, empowering everyone to contribute. That's how you get real organic improvement.
Yeah. Okay, we've really broken it down from the high-level strategy right down to fixing root causes and encouraging ideas. We saw how Fabricaciones de Precision navigated it all. So pulling it all together, what's the real takeaway? What kind of company culture emerges when ISO 9001.2015 is done well, beyond just having the certificate?
When it's done right, it genuinely transforms the culture. Quality stops being a department and becomes just how things are done. You see a culture built on, first, evidence-based decisions. Gut feelings get replaced by data from KPIs, audits, surveys. Smarter choices. Second, a real focus on prevention over correction. That risk-based thinking saves a fortune by stopping problems before they start. Less rework, fewer complaints. Third, efficiency and waste reduction. Standardizing processes, cutting out steps that don't add value. Saves time, money, resources. Fourth, strategic alignment. Everyone, top to bottom, understands how their job connects to the big picture, to quality, to customer satisfaction, pulling together. And finally, trust and reputation. That certificate isn't just paper. It signals reliability, consistency. It opens doors, reassures customers, builds partnerships. It's a tangible asset.
That paints a really compelling picture, huge benefits. But let's be realistic, it can't all be smooth sailing. What are the common roadblocks or pitfalls companies hit when they try to implement or maintain this? And crucially, How do they get past them?
Very important question. Knowing the pitfalls helps avoid them. Probably the biggest is the perception of bureaucracy, the paper monster fear we talked about. The fix: be ruthless about documenting only what adds value. Keep it lean, keep it practical. Focus on clarity, not volume. Another huge one is resistance to change. Employees might just see it as more work. Overcoming that takes constant communication, good training, but mostly showing them what's in it for them. How does it make their job easier, safer, better? Get their buy-in.
Okay, bureaucracy and resistance. What else?
Superficial management commitment. If the bosses see it just as a cost or a badge to put on the website, it's doomed. Leadership has to live it, champion it, use the data. It has to be visible. Then there's the risk of stagnation after certification, getting a certificate and then coasting. Thinking, okay, done now until the next audit. Improvement has to become a continuous habit, part of the daily rhythm, not an annual chore. And lastly, sometimes companies misinterpret the risk approach. They create generic lists of risks that aren't really connected to their strategy or operations. Risk thinking needs to be baked into actual decision-making every day at all levels to be meaningful, not just a document filed away. Ultimately, doing ISO 901.201 fine well means embedding quality thinking into everything. It builds a more resilient, customer-focused, and competitive company. It's definitely a journey, not just a destination, but the rewards are significant.
That's a great summary. It really clarifies that this is far more than just compliance. It's a framework for running a better business, period. We saw how Fabricaciones de Precision made it real. So after this deep dive, here's something to think about. How could you apply some of these core ideas, maybe evidence-based decisions, or thinking about prevention, or finding small ways to continuously improve in your own work, or even in a personal project? What's one principle that really stands out to you that you can maybe try out?